Hey everyone, I'm Shakti. And today we're going to be talking about disability, growing up, and life. And today I'm joined by Rebecca. Could you tell me a bit about your disability? Because it's very different from mine.
People often assume that I have spina bifida. Lots of doctors, even writing on my medical notes, spina bifida, which is a little bit annoying. But the basics of sacroiliogenesis is that I am missing the lumbar and sacrum parts of my spine, and that kind of affected the way the lower half of my body kind of grew and developed. As sacroiliogenesis is something quite rare. Like I think there are only maybe 4 or 5 people in New Zealand that have it.
Dude. But yeah, I feel like I know a lot of people who have spina bifida, and I've met them and I've talked to them. But yeah, that must be a really different experience having not as many people to talk to about it.
Yeah, I think the weirdest time I looked into it was when I looked at sacroiliogenesis on Wikipedia, and they had like a notable person section. And I was on it.
No way!
I was like,
wait, really?
That is really weird. And it was like Rebecca Dubbett, New Zealand Paralympian. I was like, oh.
Dude, look at that, represent. That's really cool. Representation. And you're like, oh, it's actually me. I'm doing that.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if I should be weirded out or flattered right now.
No, you should be so flattered. That's so cool, dude. Yeah, I'm sure for other people that look it up that have it, they're going to see you, right? That's so neat.
Yeah.
Cool. I reckon we can move on to this thing. Do you remember these from like primary school?
I do.
These like fortune tellers. Would you like to choose a color?
Blue.
B-L-U-E.
Let's go 3.
3. I'm gonna open it. What are your dreams and future goals, Rebecca?
I have a lot of dreams and goals coming up.
Awesome.
Recently I retired from paraswimming.
Yeah.
And before I retired, my dream was to go to the Tokyo Paralympics and to win a gold medal.
No way. Yeah.
I struggled a lot with injuries, and I had to have surgery on my elbow, and the surgery went really well, but my recovery, my rehab back into training didn't. And I was kind of all of a sudden confronted with this big decision that I had to make as to whether I try really hard to go to Tokyo, or do I, for the sake of my long-term health and well-being, retire from swimming and kind of set some different goals. So I spent a lot of time really thinking about what I wanted and what I wanted to achieve in my future. So I would say, looking at my 5-year plan, because I like to plan, I like to buy a house, and I like to start a family. And I'd really like to focus on building a really successful career in media, marketing, and communications.
It must have been crazy, like having that be such an important part of your life.
Well, and it was, because I was swimming ever since I was like 6-7 years old.
That's
so
crazy.
All I ever knew was swimming. Like for such a long time, I was Rebecca the swimmer. And I was terrified of what that was going to be. Or who I was going to be without it. You know, being confronted with the idea that maybe I had to retire, I was like, well, shit, I need to really think about what I want, and
like,
you know,
who your like identity is.
And I still feel like I'm really figuring that out. Like I definitely have days where I'm like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing. Like, am I on the right path? And I'm just kind of saying yes to everything and really putting myself out there for opportunities. And like I'm loving where it's going. So currently I work for the Halberg Foundation, which is basically a big accumulation of everything that I am passionate about, which is disability, sport, and kind of making things more accessible for the next generation.
You're a perfect person for that job as well. I feel like, because you've competed at that high level, and I'm sure you've lived those same experiences, that you know what young people with disabilities need in that situation. I bet that it must be a really good feeling to be proud of that as well. Yeah. For me, one thing that I've thought about is the Paralympics are a really big thing now. And I think it's really cool now. It's in like mainstream media. We see that a lot more now. You've been involved in that. And what are your thoughts on that sort of representation of disabled people?
What happened in Rio with TVNZ and Attitude, kind of with the free to air, that did so much in terms of growing parasport, in terms of everyday people and everyday people with disabilities having access to see that, to see what that's like. Because in London we didn't have that. It was all privatized, and there was very limited coverage as well because there was too much money to do anything substantial. And coming back from London, like there wasn't a lot of hype around the Paralympics, and it, you know, you just kind of came back and you went back to your everyday life. There was nothing really special about coming back from the London Paralympics. But then Rio, so many more people had seen it. The media had been given tools to explain it in a way that the public could understand, because I think that's a barrier to really kind of getting into parasport, is people are too scared to talk about it because they don't know what's going on. They don't understand the classifications. They don't understand disability sport as a whole. It's confusing and it's scary, and that's okay. But I feel like it's our job as well to really, you know, provide people with resources so that they can understand, and Paralympics kind of tried to do that. And once, you know, news sources and the media were explaining to people how it worked, they were watching it and they were starting to figure it out, and they were really enjoying it, and they were like, hey, this is really cool. So I am so proud to be a Paralympian. And it really bugs me when people go, oh my God, you're an Olympian, that's so cool. Not an Olympian. Haven't been to the Olympics. Please don't call me that. And then you try to explain it to them in the nicest way possible, and they go, oh, but it's the same thing. Like, you know, I think Olympian is way cooler. Like, you're an Olympian. Because it's almost like it's perceived that me being a Paralympian isn't cool enough. So they're like, oh, we're just going to call you an Olympian.
Buff it up. Yeah, absolutely. It's the same argument as like, oh, I don't see disability in my head. You know what I mean? It's like that same vibe, like, which is just a pure lack of understanding, in my opinion. And
it's trying to educate, but it's, you know, what is the best way to do that? How are we going to kind of overcome that? And that I don't have the answer
You
for.
do not have the answer. I was just about to. Would you like to pick a color?
Let's go yellow.
YELLOW.
Let's go 1.
All right. How did you feel about yourself and your disability as a kid?
I don't think I really noticed my disability as a kid.
Interesting. What was that?
I don't think I was ever really brought up to think of myself as different. Like, I think my parents did a phenomenal job raising me and helping me grow. Because they never treated me any differently. And I think it wasn't until I kind of got to my teenage years that I started to really notice the differences.
Was there something that like brought that on?
Boys. Like starting to like boys and realizing that boys maybe didn't like me back because I used a wheelchair and my friends didn't. But then it was also just things like I started to really get into my swimming, and that kind of took off. Just again, I was, you know, 15, 16, swimming with kids that were 11 and 12. And kind of having that difference and always kind of being separated, and it just kind of started to get to me. And I didn't really like the way I looked because, you know, fashion magazines and media and everything kind of played into how you're supposed to feel about yourselves. And I would go shopping with my friends and they'd be trying on clothes, and I would try on something that they'd been trying on, but it would look different on me, and I didn't like the way it looked. And that was just really confronting. I think it wasn't until I was 23 that I was perfectly happy and content with who I was. And it took a lot of soul searching and kind of, you know, deep thought and deep reflection, and really had to change the way I thought about myself and the way I saw my outlook, and had to take it from a real negative, you know, no one could ever love you because, you know, you might need help doing some other things and you have a wheelchair, and all those other negative thoughts that you just kind of manifest about yourself that make you hate your life. And I realized I can't go on like this because I'm not going to wake up one day and magically not be disabled.
That's a really tough thing to come to, I think.
Like, and I didn't like being this negative person that, you know, would go to a bar with my friends and they'd be pointing out, you know, all the guys that they wanted to chat up, and I was just internally thinking, well, none of them are going to be interested in me. I didn't want to be that person. I just kind of wanted to accept what my life was and kind of just be confident. And I think, you know, if I could tell anything to my younger self, it's that once you get over that, it gets better.
So you're talking about those feelings of coming to terms with your identity and feeling good about yourself. Were there any tools that you used, or were there support?
I don't think I had tools as such to come to terms with it. I was very blessed to have a lot of support from my family and from my friends.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think a lot of it kind of had to come from me.
Yeah.
Because it was my life, it wasn't anyone else's life. And, you know, in that same year, I won my first Paralympic bronze medal.
Well done.
And it was almost like my life peaked, and I was just like, there was nothing that I would change.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change my disability. I wouldn't change my friends, my family, the path that I was on, the fact that I was studying at university or anything. I was completely and 100% content with who I was. And that's never gone away. It's only grown, and my life, I feel like it's kind of manifested into this just amazing, and you know, I wake up every morning and I'm just like, holy shit, this is my life. Like, I'm just so happy.
I feel like, one of the big things about this disability thing is that the collaboration makes it easier for everyone. I definitely think that if I saw more Indian boys in wheelchairs on TV, I would probably feel a bit more confident about who I was, and what I can achieve.
But that's where, like, shameless plug here, amazing human being Grace Stratton with All Is For All. Like,
Absolutely.
how amazing is that?
It's pretty crazy.
I went to my first New Zealand Fashion Week casting.
Wow.
Like, you know, I've always loved fashion, and, you know, I've never been afraid to get in front of a camera. Like, I love dressing up and I love doing that. Yeah. But I never saw that as a pathway or an option for myself. Ever.
Yeah.
And then Grace starts up All Is For All, and, you know, I was saying to my partner earlier, I never knew that by, you know, taking a couple of selfies in the bathroom at work and sending them to her being like, can I be a part of this? While, you know, it's all her and Ange over there doing these amazing things, creating these opportunities, the fact that I get to be a part of it, that I may be a part of, you know, another young girl in a wheelchair seeing me in, you know, nice clothes and being like, far out, you know, I can do that too.
I think it's really amazing what Grace Stratton has been doing. And even the idea that she's creating opportunities for women like you to access that kind of thing. It's interesting to think that before that, there's not even an opportunity or like a path of least resistance to get into that kind of thing. Do you think it's like the responsibility of us young people to be doing this?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think we can put too much emphasis on reliance on that older generation to do it. I think one of the things that you kind of discover when you kind of get into your adult years is that when you're little, you think adults know everything, and they're the ones out there creating the change and making the difference. But then when you get to, you know, your own adult years and you're like, great, I don't know what I'm doing, and nobody else knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you've got these ideas, if you want to go out there and be an advocate, don't wait for someone else to do it. It's finding the balance as well, because you don't want to go down the spectrum where you're someone who just fights all the time for injustice. Yeah. Because I think that puts you in a really negative space.
I think it's also very taxing, right?
Yeah, it is. And I see people out there who they've just spent their whole lives fighting for things that they don't know how to be positive, or they don't know how to affect change in an effective way anymore. Yeah. Because what I've found is that I've had much more success changing things coming from a place of kindness and empathy.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming here today and having a chat with me. It's been great talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.